Our next interview is with Ken Karmiole from the Southern California chapter. He's out of L.A. And Ken's been a long-time bookseller, even though he's not that old. Ken, tell us a little bit about your background, family, schools, where you grew up, siblings, etc.
Sure. Born in Cleveland, Ohio, first 6 years there, second 6 years in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 12 on from Southern California, West Los Angeles, walking distance to UCLA, high school, college in Santa Barbara for 4 years, which is where I got started in buying and selling books when I was an undergraduate at UC Santa Barbara. My father was in sales, so getting involved in the book business was my own thing. I didn't follow in his footsteps at all. As a matter of fact, when he later retired, he wound up working for me. And also got my mom involved a little bit. She used to help out at some of the book fairs as an assistant. And I'm trying to remember what else you asked me.
Just
how I got started.
Background.
Yes, general background.
I know that. What was the year approximately that you began buying and selling books in Santa Barbara?
Sure. I was a junior in 1967. I graduated at Santa Barbara 68, and I was getting interested in secondhand and older books. I was going to the used bookstores and meeting the dealers and poking around. And then I got to meet the acquisitions librarian at UCSB. This was a time in the 60s when there was a lot of buying for that campus. It was growing considerably, new PhD programs, and library. A lot of money went into library holdings, resources. And Martha would let me sit in her office and look over catalogs and talk to her about books. And then at some point in time, she said, well, if you turn up things that kind of the scholarly type books that we need, and I can, give you some help with that, I'll buy them from you. We made a deal for $5 a book. So if I found some good book, an interesting title in comparative religion, UCSB was the first UC campus of the 9 campuses to have a PhD in religious studies. So that was an area I got involved in quite early. And then I started selling some books to the library. And then as well as continuing to to meet the people in the trade, subscribing to the A.B. Bookman, going around to the thrift shops, the garage sales, getting more and more immersed into the world of books.
When did you start working for Heritage?
I was left Santa Barbara. I was out of school for a couple years. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Central America, and then I decided to either go back to college and law school or pursue some sort of a degree. And somebody said to me, "Well, have you ever heard of library school?" I said, "No, I never heard of library school. I never even knew there was such a thing." And so they said, well, yeah, check it out, because you can do something involved with rare books. So in 1970, I started the program at UCLA, and one day I was walking out of Dawson's Bookshop on they were still on Larchmont at that time. I never knew Dawson's when they were downtown. That was before my time. Lou Weinstein followed me out to my car and said, oh, by the way, I know I've seen you around. You've been in my shop a couple of times, and we're looking for an employee. Would you be interested in working part-time? I said, great. So they knew I was in the library program, and they wanted somebody to help them. They were very smart about how to build their business, and they realized that a certain amount of business is done with institutions, and they didn't want to do it themselves. So they got me to call up Cal State Fullerton or UC Irvine or whatever, and tell the librarian, listen, we can go get some lunch, and I can show you some of our catalogs or to show you some books that I can bring along with me. And so I started working for Ben and Lou part-time in 70, part-time in 71. And it was a short period of time where I didn't work for them, but maybe only about 6 or 9 months. And then 73, 4, and 5, full-time as my major employment, and I got a title of shop manager. And then it was 1976 that I started my own business, January of 76.
And where did you start your first?
First shop was on Westwood Boulevard. I actually had a little office in Santa Monica. I lived in Santa Monica and had a little office there where I stored some books that I had accumulated. I used to pay $50 a month for this. It was just a little space. But I really never did any business out of that.
Just a drop spot?
It was where, where I kind of like worked with the books, a small office space. And then on Westwood Boulevard, 1976, I had an office for a short time, and then I found a 1,000-square-foot storefront on Westwood Boulevard just south of Olympic Boulevard. And I was there from 76 until 85, I believe it was, or 86. And then I moved to Santa Monica.
Santa Monica.
Yes.
Were you on 3rd Street?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. This 3rd Street Promenade, kind of one of the major commercial areas for Santa Monica, was very depressed. It was before they did a huge renovation, and I was able to buy a small building there on a half a lot, so I became an owner-user of this space and had about a 3,000-square-foot bookstore there. And retail was open 7 days a week. I had 4 or 5 employees, and I was there until 1995 when I moved. When I sold off most of my general inventory, Powell's bookstore in Portland bought a lot of my general inventory, and I moved about 1,000 or 1,500 books to a 2,000-square-foot office on Wilshire and 5th Street in Santa Monica.
Is that where you are now?
No. I was there 95 to 2003, and then the building was knocked down for development. And I then moved back to the 3rd Street Promenade in an office. Since 2003, it's about 1,000 square feet, 2 rooms, and I house about 2,000 books for sale and about 4,000 reference books. And I just have one employee. He sits at the desk in the front room. I have my own desk in the back room, and it's very cozy and works very well.
Sounds like a better situation than the one you had with 5 employees.
Well, it just depends on how you want to do it. I didn't want to do retail anymore, and so I've been, since 95, basically by appointment with a much smaller inventory of, and more antiquarian materials before, let's say, 1800, a lot of continental books. I mean, if somebody comes along with a good book in any field, I'll consider it.
What part does the Internet play in your life and business?
Absolutely a huge part. I still continue to do all of the traditional things that we've always done. I issue printed catalogs 3 or 4 a year. I do the book fairs. I have a space available to anybody to come and see my inventory and to look over my books. It's very convenient. I'm right next to a huge parking structure.
That makes it easy.
Very simple for anyone, once you know where I am. Yeah. And so I do, direct quoting, getting on the phone, or going to visit libraries. I don't visit too many private customers, but I do continue from time to time to visit institutions. But now the Internet is absolutely the growth area of the trade for selling books. More and more people do their shopping online, and it's international. I mean, there's not a huge depth to the collector world out there, but there are enough people. When you look at every country of the world, there's so many collectors in England, so many collectors in Germany, and so many collectors in New Zealand. And connecting with some esoteric title that you may have, looking for that particular thing, that book.
Is all of your inventory on the Internet?
Everything gets very quickly cataloged. Myself and my employee Sandy, we both work very. We get everything quickly cataloged and put online, and he does all of the data entry and all of that kind of stuff, and maintains those files and things, yeah.
What percentage of your business would you say comes from the Internet? What percentage comes from book fairs?
I've never, I've never.
Just a ballpark figure, just for statistical purposes.
I don't know. Probably the Internet business now is half.
Really?
Could be. Could well be.
And then your catalogs and book fairs sales are make up the other half.
Yeah,
basically.
and visits, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have a visit and somebody spends $400. I could have a visitor and they could spend $40,000.
Right.
Yeah. But the internet is a real steady business. Even though I only have about 2,000 books online, I typically get an order at least just about every day for something, or if not 2 or 3 items.
Yeah. Was it a difficult transition for you as a person and bookseller to go to the internet after all those years of being a traditional bookseller?
Well, it's just you have to switch gears. I mean, I would love to be able to, people say, well, where do you buy your books? Well, you buy your books wherever you find them. If you could walk down the street and everybody's door was open and they all had books for sale, I'd be walking down the street going into every house. But the shops are fewer and fewer. Also the way that shops price now, you have a lot of little guys, smaller businesses that are just general secondhand, that now when they see a book for $150 that they paid $5 for, they make theirs $135. And you ask them, well, why is it $135? They don't know why it's $135, but they said they know that somebody else has it for $150.
Right, that's the only reason.
Yeah. So rather than before, they would have been happy to put a $25 bill in their pocket and had a nice little profit on a $5 purchase. That's not happening anymore. So, I still visit bookshops wherever I am. I was here in Boston. I visit the bookshops. But you can't do it the same way that we used to do it. Now, of course, I search people's inventories constantly on the internet.
Right.
The best way to do that I've found is through Abe Books. Their advanced search allows you to punch in a lot of the things that I care about. So if I want to, I can take any member of our association or any dealer that I happen to notice has some antiquarian books, and just punch in $14.60 to $17.99 and see what they have, what comes up. And then typically I'll contact them directly and talk to them about what they have, and buy books that way.
How do you feel about the two basic ways of doing things, the general bookseller and the specialist bookseller? Do you see I think there's a future for the specialist bookseller. Mm-hmm. I'm not so sure there's a future for the generalist. How do you feel?
Well, I think it's going to be probably harder for the generalist to get the material at a price to be competitive to sell it to the specialist. What's happening is that more and more generalists don't understand that whole pecking order, and so they want to put their Americana or their medicine or their children's books or their travel literature in line with what specialist dealers are offering their books for, kind of cutting out one of the most aggressive area of book buyers, which was the trade, the specialist trade. So if you're able to do it, if you're able to be a generalist and buy interesting books and still price them so that your prices can be attractive to specialist dealers, ipso facto, they're going to be, enticing to a collector or a library. If a dealer's going to buy it, that's going to be repricing it perhaps double. Certainly that price should look good to a potential collector that may need the title. So you're in real good shape at things like book fairs. And I think I've been able to, pretty much do that as a generalist. I'll typically, sell a third or half of the books that, dollar-wise, that I'll bring to a book fair sometimes. And
that's a very high percentage in comparison to your comrades.
Yeah, well, again, it just depends on how you do it and how you think about your pricing and stuff. I don't want to, if I see somebody that's a specialist in New England material that gets $350 for the book, I want to price mine $200.
Right.
So you can consider buying mine.
Other than the influence you may have experienced from the Weinsteins, who are some of the other booksellers who had an influence on you, who may have mentored you, or who were someone you might want to talk to about a particular thing. Did you have any of those kinds of booksellers in your life?
Yeah, I think there's always been, people that have helped me along. There was an L.A. dealer by the name of Harry Bierman had a business called Pick a Book Company, and he had the in with the local household auctioneer, Abel's Book Auction, which in Southern California handles an awful lot of stuff. And they sell from, like used utensils, silverware, plates, and kitchen to anything you can imagine. I mean, things that are, very, very valuable and important. And Harry was their book guy, and he didn't have he would get a lot of stuff through that, and I became his guy for the older books that he would turn up. So, regularly have coffee, have lunch with him, do stuff together. So Harry was always a good colleague. Lou Weinstein particularly was a key person also, as working for them for so many years. After that, once I got into business for myself, I've always tried to have good relations with the other people in the trade. I've always done at least a third of my business with the trade. So I try to avoid conflicts with the people that are there. There are a couple of them that I couldn't avoid, so there are a handful of dealers that I just don't do any business with and have no interest in doing any activities with them. But almost everybody else, wherever I go, I try to, get to know the dealers and keep on good terms. More and more what I've been doing in my business, particularly in Southern California, is buying things jointly. Mm-hmm. When it comes to early printed books, in many cases I'll have had more experience than a lot of the other dealers, so they'll have an opportunity to buy something and they'll call me up and say, let's do it together. And a lot of times I did this with Jim Lorson.
Rest in peace.
Yes, passed away a year ago, or less than a year ago. Michael Dawson and I have been colleagues as far as this goes. Mm-hmm. Any antiquarian book that comes his way, I buy 50% with him. And actually, right now we're working on a major project with his mailing list, old mailing list of trying to cultivate some buried collections.
Well, that's one way to cultivate them, isn't it?
And I'm doing this more and more with people in the trade, and that's because I've developed good relations with them. A lot of times they let me do all the merchandising. I do all the bookkeeping. I send them regular checks. I've done this with Historicana, with just many, many dealers you wouldn't even think of that people have called me up that just get things that they don't know what to do with them, really how to sell them.
Yeah, that's the issue.
And we'll put the money together 50-50 and deal with the expenses 50-50 and do that. So, and in a lot of specialized areas, like if I get literature,
right.
Peter Stern is my go-to guy. In different areas, I have developed these connections in the trade, and for me that works great.
What are the pros and cons of partnerships? These kinds of book partnerships?
I think potentially, sometimes there can be some accounting screw-ups, and people don't get paid promptly when they should be getting paid. But I think if you start seeing these problems, you should learn from that, and then not be partnering anymore with those people.
With that person.
Otherwise, they work quite well, because you oftentimes have two people now selling, potentially marketing a book aggressively. You recently bought the first American Folio Bible, Isaiah Thomas 1791, with Rob Rulon Miller in Seattle. So now he'll have his clientele in his part of the Midwest. I have my clientele in Southern California. We'll probably both put it in various lists. And the chances of selling it are probably doubled.
Of course, the payoff's only half.
But it only cost me half.
Yeah,
You know?
true. From that point of view, yeah. Anybody else you can think of that was an influence on you
Particularly
as a
influential.
younger bookseller, making your way up the ladder?
No, I pretty much did everything. I was pretty independent.
Yeah.
I was lucky I didn't need any financial assistance. I never even set up a bank line of credit. If I ever needed any money, luckily I could go to my folks, and they would advance me the money on a temporary basis. I would pay them back with interest. I would write up a promissory note.
The whole Megillah.
And so I didn't have that. Like I said, I did a lot of the fairs, and I did a lot of the ILAB stuff, congresses and fairs. So I got to meet the trade around the world, but I don't think there was anybody that was really played such a key role in my development. Yeah.
What do you see as some of the great challenges facing the antiquarian book trade as we sort of proceed into the future?
Yeah. Well, buying books and selling books.
Obviously.
Buying them, I think probably the longer you've been in the business, I'm finding this out now, the more things that, the more potential for your phone to ring and something to happen. Like, as I said, other dealers are contacting me now. People I've sold books to over the years now want to sell them, or somebody's passed away that was a collector for a good 20, 30, 40 years. There are fewer of us in Southern California now doing antiquarian books. Heritage's profile is very, very low compared to what it was. Frank Spellman, a good colleague, does antiquarian books, can't get out of the house to look at things. Bill Daly is doing less and less with antiquarian books. So there are fewer of us. Dawson's no longer really buys independently for antiquarian books. So I do hear about things usually, or often.
Are there open bookshops closing in Southern Cal like they're closing all over the country?
Oh, sure, yes.
At the same sort of ridiculous rate?
Yeah. There's no real secondhand bookstore now any longer in Santa Monica. There was one called Wilshire Books on Wilshire Boulevard, which closed. The big Book City shop closed on Hollywood Boulevard.
Really? I used to go there all the time.
Mm-hmm. In Bob Weinstein's store, the Book Baron, the largest one in Orange County, closed. Bob Weinstein's alive. His brother Jerry passed away.
Jerry was up in the Pacific Northwest.
Jerry was in Eugene, Oregon, and he passed away. Many shops have. Lawson's is closing this year.
He passed away too.
Well, the shop has been open until just recently.
Really?
All of the antiquarian books now have been sold, and his wife has had a new book, children's business, which is closing by the end of the year.
So she's going to retire.
Yeah, that was the go-to place for a lot of collectors in Orange County.
It's a go-to place for me.
Uh-huh.
Over the years, I always got wonderful.
Sure.
things to do.
So Santa Barbara still has a number of shops, but a lot of them have closed in Southern California. San Diego, Warren Brock's finished.
He passed away?
Yes. Chuck Valverde passed away, and the shop was supposed to continue, but his kids decided not to continue the business.
That's too bad.
Very fewer and fewer shops.
One last question before I let you go.
Oh, thank you. God, that went quickly.
Yeah, it always does, doesn't it? If a young bookseller comes to you and says, Mr. Karmiole, I'm thinking about becoming a bookseller, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think some sort of an internship working for somebody else couldn't hurt.
Right.
Just having somebody help them to get a real dose of reality. It's very, very hard to make a small business a success today. there's people don't realize what goes out the door every month. For you need some envelopes. It's $100 here. You got to make your insurance payment, numerous insurance policies. You got to, every little thing costs money. So any small business is a huge challenge. And in order to make it in the book business, you have to have cash flow. You have to sell some of your product regularly. You have to be realistic in how you price things. Otherwise, you're just going to keep the economy strong by contributing and losing a bunch of money in the end. Very, very hard to make it go.
Thanks a lot, Ken. Great
All right.
interview.